I'm Naya, mom, boob nerd, board-certified lactation consultant, and lover of lipstick and curse words. I'm that weird Indian girl you knew in high school, all grown up.
And I'm Alexis, mom, birth nerd, and therapist plus doula, encouraging parents to hold joy plus what the fuck is this mess simultaneously. Some people think I'm too much, but those aren't my people. And we are the Top Knot Squad. TKS is a tiny little podcast about motherhood in real life, the good, the bad, the ugly AF.
Hosted by two women that are passionate about our beliefs and unafraid to speak our minds.
Friends that wanted to create space for all that ish we are too scared to talk about.
Are you ready to laugh, be vulnerable, and keep it real with us?
Top knots are not required.
If the Top Knot Squad content makes you laugh, nod in agreement, or makes you feel less alone, we'd love your support in the cost of producing this podcast. Visit patreon.com/topknotsquad to learn more about our budget-friendly sponsorship tiers and how you can help ensure that TKS has a future. Every little bit helps.
On this episode, the squad talks about mental health, more specifically ADHD in women, and having a change in diagnosis. We all know that motherhood is ever evolving. Each phase brings new joys and new challenges. But what about how we're doing? Oh yeah, that changes too. The same applies to our mental health. As we change from one phase to the next, the same coping mechanisms, medications, and therapies may need to be updated too. On today's episode, we will be discussing the mental health journey of one mother who realized she needed to be reevaluated after seeing signs on TikTok. We are excited to be joined by Katie Crenshaw. Katie is a mother of three living in Atlanta, Georgia, a best-selling author, maternal mental health advocate, and speaker. Her work has been featured in the mighty Redbook, Good Housekeeping, Scary Mommy, and the Huffington Post. We're so glad to have you, Katie.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm so excited. I'm excited to do this one. It's a little different than some of the other ones I've done, so I'm so excited.
Yeah, I follow you, obviously, and I love all your content. You're hilarious and honest, and just like it said in your bio, you talk a lot about mental health, which I'm a fan of, being a therapist. I hope
Yes.
I'm a fan of it.
I've always loved you for all those same reasons.
But when I saw you sharing about your ADHD journey, I was like, oh my God, Naya, I really want her to come talk about this, because I also recently attended a CEU training where I learned about body-focused repetitive behaviors, which I've diagnosed myself with. Between you and my training, I have lots of problems. So
Yeah.
I wanted to hear more because I know that we can't be alone. And I have actually heard from other women in my life that they have also been reading about ADHD and why is this, it's just so undiagnosed and untreated. So let's create more conversation around it.
Definitely.
Well, let's dive right in. Something new that we're trying this season is to kick off each episode with kind of a check-in. We've been calling it our what the fuck yeah moments. And then we just sort of share one fuck yeah or one what the fuck moment from our day or week, whatever. It doesn't have to be parenting related. It can be related to anything. I guess I can go ahead and go. My what the fuck moment has to do with online schooling, which sucks. It's a shit show at my house, but I've been getting emails from my kid's teacher about assignments that aren't being completed, despite him swearing up and down that he finished it. He's 9, almost 10. And so he's like, oh, I finished all my homework. I'm done. I'm going to watch YouTube videos of people yelling and playing Fortnite for a really long time. And I'm like, okay, believing him. But then I get the emails from the teachers and it's like incomplete, must complete, did not finish sentences, like all of that stuff. So it's been kind of rough over here. So that's definitely my what the fuck moment.
That's my exact life. That's my what the fuck moment every 5 minutes. But with an 11-year-old boy. Yeah, I guess like the craziest thing, well, this whole like last week has felt like everything that could be like in retrograde and mess up my life is doing it. But my husband actually lost his job last week, which was like the biggest what the fuck. And then my laptop broke. It's been crazy. But today, what has been really crazy for me to see. So I'm in Metro Atlanta, and it's been trending on Twitter and everywhere, like the voting lines, the early voting lines. Obviously we're like famous for voter suppression, but the lines, people are waiting in line here for like 12 hours to vote.
Wow.
It's crazy. Like I drove by a line today and people were just like camped out with drinks and food, and I was like, this is so crazy. Like, what is happening right now?
Ugh, that's bananas. We're gonna try to go vote tomorrow. But there's a website I used that tells you the wait times. And we're in Williamson County, which is not truly Austin. We're not actually in Austin.
That's okay. We'll let you say you're from Austin.
Yeah.
It's like me in Atlanta. I get it.
But the wait time was only like 15 minutes out here.
That's amazing.
That was today. So I don't know. We'll see. What do I have? I don't know, man. I should have thought about this before. I mean, my brain is just like, someone asked me what I did this weekend, and I said, I have no idea. I can't remember.
Yeah. I mean, my Vyvanse is worn off at this point, so I'm going to do my best, guys.
Oh, come on, Alexis. Think of a what the fuck. All I do is complain all the time, and I can't think of something to complain about right now. I seriously, my brain is like...
Is Reese sleeping better?
Not really.
Okay, there's your what the fuck.
I mean, I guess he's sleeping a little bit better. My what the fuck is definitely sleep is just always an issue. We have Rowan non-sleeper, and Reese is like in a 4-month progression teething. I don't know what the fuck. And so it's not every night isn't like terrible, but it's just so inconsistent that like you never know what you're going to get. So like I kind of go to bed like terrified, like, am I going to get sleep tonight or am I not going to get sleep tonight? I don't know. So
I remember that.
That's my what the fuck. But yeah, let's dive into your story. Do you want to tell us just a little bit about you and kind of how you're a big influencer? So you're famous and you have a book and like all these things. But you know, what's kind of the link with all of that and your story and you're using your platform for mental health?
Yeah, so I started blogging. I'm a mom of 3. I live in Atlanta. I have been married more than a couple times. And so I kind of started this whole thing as an outlet. Like my blog and my platforms were originally just supposed to be this outlet for me to talk about like the unconventional parts of my motherhood journey, which is like all of it was unconventional. I've struggled with mental health my whole life. You know, I've been remarried. I've been a single mom for a period of time, just all those things. And when I started doing this, the internet was just kind of getting saturated with Pinterest moms and all of that. And so I thought maybe somebody wants to talk about the dark stuff. And I needed it anyway as like a personal outlet because I was in healthcare for 10 years. And then when my second child was born, I stayed home and I was like terrified to be a stay-at-home mom. So I started doing all of this. And it turned out that it was kind of like at the same time, Scary Mommy was getting really popular. So it was like there was obviously there were moms out there that wanted to be dark and and use foul language and, you know, like make terrible jokes. And so I was like, okay, I found my people. I was always inspired by like Jenny Lawson, you know, like the OG, like just a couple people who like really talked about real stuff. So yeah, so that's how that started. And then Instagram was kind of like a newer thing. And it just, it started to grow from there. And I've talked about everything from mental health to body image, just basically everything. There's nothing I really don't talk about, even if it's super faux pas. And I've gone viral a few times with some of those stories because there's just clearly a hole in the influencer world still for like real vulnerability, even though authenticity, quote unquote, air quotes, is trending. there's just still this missing piece for like real vulnerability that's like, you know, truly raw.
Mm-hmm. You're definitely truly raw. So you nailed it. I mean, obviously, people that know me know that I have a similar mindset in that it's impossible for me not to just speak what's in my brain anyways. Like, it's a personality piece of me, right? But that's also what inspired this podcast. Like, Naya and we actually met at a local blogger event, and we got real close to each other because we were so awkward and didn't feel like we fit in.
Right. Not cute, not Pinteresty.
Yeah, we were
just kind of awkwardly standing by the food.
Yeah, that was it. And so we became friends, and then we're both in the birth world. And so we wanted a podcast that talked about the stuff that nobody wants to talk about. So you fit right in here.
Neither of us are blogging anymore, but we're both.
Yeah, no.
We're both in the birth world.
Well, I love that because before I was a blogger, I was a doula. And then before that, I was a medical assistant in labor and delivery. So I feel like all my love of women in vulnerable states comes together as this like marriage. Like, it's always linked.
Yeah, totally. I forgot you were a doula. That's right. Yeah. That's really cool. What made you stop doing that work?
When I had Charlie, it was just like there was no way I could be on call, and
it's rough.
Yeah, it was doable with just one, and then I had like a bit of a support network. But like, yeah, after that, I went back to work in labor and delivery, like in the hospital on a schedule, but like on call stuff was just impossible.
I know you talked a little bit about your story, Katie, but would you mind sharing a little bit about kind of your mental health journey and how you got to where you are now? Whatever you're comfortable with, of course.
Oh, goodness. I'm way too comfortable with too much. My mental health journey started when I was like 9. And I was a classically, what's the word? I was, this is the 90s, and I grew up in a very strict religious evangelical kind of household. So like there was not really an acknowledgement of that, mental illness or mental health being something that we need to think about. So I kind of suffered in silence for a really long time, all the way through college. I knew I was struggling. I just didn't know what to do. I didn't really have any resources, just kind of with on and off bouts of depression. And like I had, but mostly major anxiety and panic disorder. So I was actually a mom of my firstborn, who is 11 now, but he was about 18 months old. And it's an interesting story because I knew something was wrong. I was 23. So like I knew something was just not right. I knew I was ragey and like anxiety stricken. I would like wake up with panic attacks, but I still had this like stigma that was ingrained in me from my upbringing, that like it just wasn't real and I was imagining it. And it was actually someone I knew in the community who was very religious, who was a friend of mine, who came to me and like kind of flipped the script for me. She was a pastor's wife, and she was like, I'm medicated. Like, this has nothing to do with anything. Like, you need to go to the doctor. So for some reason that clicked for me, and I went, and I wasn't even like super religious, but she just kind of like undid that for me. So I went to the doctor because it wasn't just about me anymore. I wanted to be a better mom for Grayson. And then I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder, and then like major depressive disorder episodes or whatever. So I started medication for the first time, and as most people know who've been treated after years of not being treated, it's kind of like all of a sudden you're like, what? How was I living? Like, weeks later, you're like, why was I making that so hard? So yeah, everything started to change then. And then that kind of began several years of like finding the right medicine, trying therapy, all that kind of stuff. I definitely went off a couple times and then was like, nope, that was a terrible move, early in those first couple years. So I kind of just had this anxiety, depression diagnosis that a lot of us have. And I did a lot of therapy, and I was kind of, in a good place. I did have 2 more babies while on medication. And then, I guess another significant part of my journey was after my 3rd baby was born, which was the last one. I would consider myself to be like pretty mentally health, sensitive and aware at that point. But I had him in California, and they had put me on another medication when I was breastfeeding. And for some reason, it just wasn't good. And I started to get really, I started to spiral, and I realized I was in crisis when he was about a year old and I was weaning him. So I had a late onset postpartum depression with him. And for the first time, really seriously, I really started to struggle with suicidal ideation. And this was exactly 2 years ago, just about. And obviously, thankfully, I have resources and a network. So I alerted everyone that I was in a bad place, and we got my medicine switched back to my old medicine. That was great. And then for the last 2 years, I've been relatively stable. And then COVID kind of threw me into a tailspin, which is what you guys are going to ask me about.
It did. I think COVID put us all in a tailspin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It brought anything to the surface that could be brought to the surface.
Yeah. I had a literal mental breakdown when COVID happened, which we talked about on one of our last episodes because I shared my birth story. But being pregnant and this happening was I wasn't functioning there for a minute.
I would not have been.
So I don't think anybody is, though. There's just variations of this story, right?
Yes.
So what keyed you into this has to be something different? Were there particular symptoms? I know you said that I find it hysterical that psychiatrists are on TikTok. I'm not on TikTok, so I don't know about this world.
Listen, we could do a whole episode on, I could work for TikTok. That's how much I've learned there. I have a degree in TikTok. I'm not even good at it. I just am an expert consumer. But yeah, so COVID, it wasn't the stress of a pandemic necessarily is what undid me. It was more of I finally had to be still in my own thoughts and stop escaping. And I was unable to escape my family or myself. And so at first, though, without that kind of realization, I just thought it's because of COVID and I'm freaking out and my medicine doesn't work. I've been on it too long, and I'm in the mental health world. So I talked to some of my friends who work in this all the time. And I was I just think my medicine's not working anymore. I'm just so anxious. And it was just, I just couldn't really pin it down. But of course, every responsible person, I didn't immediately make an appointment with my psychiatrist. I just kept ignoring it and
yeah, maybe
and just hoping it would get better. Yeah. Trying all CBD and doing all the things. And then I don't know, it was several months of just feeling this is so weird. So I made an appointment. It's obviously, even if you're an established patient, it can take a while to get in. So by the time I got in with her, it was just a couple months ago now. And I'm lucky, I should say off the bat, I have a reproductive psych, which are harder to find. She specializes in women's health. And she's also an educator. So I am extremely lucky. I feel so terrible when I hear all these stories from followers that cannot find a psychiatrist, or they've got to wait 9 months, or it's a guy who knows nothing about women's, it's a mess out there. So I'm lucky enough that I have her, and I've been seeing her for many years. So she's very familiar with me. And by the time I saw her, I just kind of said, here's the deal. I don't know what is going on. I want to start over. Let's pretend I've never taken anything. I've never been evaluated for anything. And can we just start over? Because I've talked myself into thinking I have a million things. And I've been watching these TikToks. Luckily, she didn't think I was crazy. But I was I've seen these psychiatrists on TikTok, giving little short, blurbs about symptoms of ADHD. And I've never considered that. And it's weird. There were specific things that they mentioned about ADHD that like, I was like, that's weird. Because when you think ADHD, like you think of impulsivity and you think of not being able to focus, but there were certain things like object permanence and the body focused repetitive behaviors and like things I had never thought of as being connected to anything other than just me being weird. Like I was like, oh. So anyway, I just said I want to start over. Like I'm curious about ADHD, but just like evaluate me as if I just met you. So she's like, okay. So we do all the evaluations. COVID, so it was like a telehealth thing. So we couldn't do the in-person stuff. But she started going through the questions. I actually ranked really low for mood disorders this time, which means my medicine is working. My anxiety still flags as high always, but she was, when we started to do the ADHD evaluation, she was like, I mean, we did several questions and then she was like, I mean, I can keep going, but like you have raging ADHD. Like, you've said yes to like way more than you have to be clinically indicated for ADHD.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was like, all right, well, I'm in for that. But she was she was like, this is so interesting. She was like, because I'm about to speak at a conference on ADHD in adult women because it's underdiagnosed, it's missed, it's different, you know, from the way it is in children or even men. So, and what we're finding is that a lot of women have exacerbated anxiety because of ADHD. So she was asking me like about specific things that trigger my anxiety, like being interrupted, which is like huge because all moms are interrupted every 5 minutes. And I would like rage if I'm focused on something and somebody breaks my focus. It makes me want to like put my fist through the sheetrock, like I can't handle it. And that was like a huge red flag for her for ADHD actually. And like road rage, like driving. I hate driving because I don't want to sit still. I hate going to the movies, like anything where I have to sit still and focus. I don't want to do it. And, you know, ADHD people are searching for dopamine hits all the time because our dopamine receptors aren't functioning properly. So, and this is all new for me because I feel like I know depression and anxiety backwards and forwards, but ADHD, this is like brand new. So I'm fascinated by how much I'm learning. But yeah, so that was one of the things, like finding out all these ways I was seeking dopamine hits, and just getting frustrated with myself, which was making me more anxious. And yeah, so she tells me this and I'm like, that's great. What do we do now? And she's like, we're going to start you on this prescription, which is, I'm on Vyvanse, which is of course like the most expensive one, but apparently it's like the cleanest, like least side effects. It's like extended release, all that. So I started it. I had really low expectations just because, you know, I've been disappointed so many times, like in this whole journey. And it can really make you feel like broken when medicine doesn't work or it gives you bad side effects and then you have to stop and, you know, and I have anxiety. So she's like, if this makes your heart race, like you have to tell me because we have to stop. And I was like, I know it's going to, and now I'm going to have to stop. And anyway, but it didn't. So it gave me like no side effects. And it's also a medicine that you can tell right away if it's going to work, like within the first day or two. And the first thing I noticed was I was able to like sit down and play with my 3-year-old, like blocks, which sounds like stupid, but
that doesn't sound stupid at all.
But like the reason like I hate doing that is because like I feel like my skin is coming off. Like I have to like do something else and it's wasting my time. And like it's just like I can't explain how miserable it is. So, but I realized I had been sitting there for like 20 minutes, like, and didn't like I was able to just think about that. And it was like, this is crazy. This is so crazy. I was able to like take a nap. Like it was like not what you think it would be on amphetamines. Like I totally chilled out. And I was like, there's no way like this works this well. But yeah, like every day it was the same. And it just was life-changing. I don't even know
what to say.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to the symptoms because one thing I learned in that training I took, because she was talking about ADHD specifically in new motherhood, and she was talking a lot how breastfeeding can be really difficult for women that have ADHD because you're sitting still, you're bored out of your mind, you're trapped, you're stuck there. And so she was talking about how a lot of times like the body focused repetitive behaviors are going to happen in those still bored moments. And that's like how you're coping.
Well, it's interesting because one way I can think about it in breastfeeding, because I breastfed all three, and so ADHD people also like refute like routine or structure, or like what anybody tells me to do, like I automatically don't do it. That was one of the first things she asked me was, when you have a deadline, like, do you meet it? And I'm like, no, but not because I can't. Like, I can have a deadline 6 months away and I'll purposely do it the day after the deadline for no reason. Like, just because, like, I'm just like, I don't know. But that's like an ADHD thing. It's like this, you're pushing this dopamine thing so that you have this like pressure rush, like whatever. And with breastfeeding, I just remember it being like I only nursed on one side. I didn't even try to make Lincoln nurse on the other side because I was like, I don't have to do this. I can just nurse on one side. Like, nobody's going to make me nurse on both sides. Like, just really stupid things would go like in my brain. Like, so stupid. And I can't tell you how many times I dropped a phone on their face because I couldn't just breastfeed. I had to be doing something else.
Yeah. So I'm the same even now. And I'm in this mom, like online support group with other moms with babies similar ages. And a couple of them are, they talk a lot about, what's it called? The cancer rays that come from
UV.
Oh, yeah.
It has a name. I don't think it's UV.
No,
like
it's
radiation.
Yeah, some type of radiation comes from our phones and is like causing everyone cancer. And so like they don't use their phones near their babies for that reason. And I'm just like, I would like die. I can't.
No, me neither. I would not survive.
Yeah. But I also, the body focused repetitive behaviors has like blown my mind because my whole life, I never necessarily identified it as a problem. So if I showed you on my arm right now, like it's full of scabs. And then I also oftentimes, if I get a zit and it turns into something, like it festers forever and stays on my face. And then I bite my nails, I chew my cuticles, and like really bad where like I bleed and I get infections and all kinds of stuff. And I never really, identified it as this is an issue that maybe I can, it can be fixed and maybe I want to do that. But I also never really linked it to my mental health. Like, I guess I sometimes was like, I guess I do this when I'm anxious, because a lot of times I don't even notice that I do it. Mm-hmm. So like my husband will be like, stop biting your nails or stop picking. And I'm like, oh, I am biting my nails. I don't. And I do it a lot in those still, like just watching TV, I'll start biting my nails and it's just like automatic.
It's because we're not like stimulated enough. It's like,
yeah. So, anyways, you introduced me to that, just by watching you on Instagram, and it just made me like look at all of that in a different way. But I also really appreciated part of what she shared in this training that I was in was about how support people can be more supportive. And in a general sense, it was how people can be supportive about mental health across the board, and that like, don't use a shame statement, like get over it or calm down, or in the case of body focused repetitive behavior, stop it. Like those are all, yeah, those are all shame based and not helpful, because whatever behavior related to what's going on is beyond your control in that moment, right? That's the whole thing. Like you're not purposely doing that. And if you could control it, you would.
Like, and you're telling me to stop something that is, I'm coping. Like that's my coping mechanism. You're telling me to stop doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, I just like that, even that, like, I guess I never had identified it as shame before. Like whenever Ben will bring attention to those behaviors. And then he's even said before that, because Rowan, my daughter, bites her nails. And so he's like, look, she's watching what you're doing and now she bites her nails. And I learned in that training that it's genetic, like it's not a learned behavior. And I know my mom she picked her eyebrows out. So obviously it runs in my family. And yeah. So anyways, I don't know if you have more to share around that, but those body focused repetitive behaviors just kind of blew my mind. And I don't think people, like, nobody wants to talk about, oh, look, I have all these open wounds on my arm. Like, it's just not like.
No. And what's interesting is, honestly, that has been, you know, I've spent years like practicing vulnerability and connecting with people through like some really embarrassing things about myself. And for me, the biggest thing that I was still self-conscious about that I almost told nobody. I mean, it's obvious because I have scabs on my face, but like I was still really ashamed of picking my face. That was like because it's gross and like it's hideous and you're like, I have wounds on my face. Like, it's just embarrassing. And so I don't even think I've ever talked about it as much as I have now that I have this diagnosis, because I just thought it was something weird that I did. And I mean, I know that like, you know, dermatillomania is a habit, but I didn't know it was like linked to anything. I thought it was like just some weird tic that was somehow connected to anxiety. And and then also you might have learned about this in your conference, but like there's such a big difference between body focused repetitive behaviors and self-harm.
Yeah.
I would be like, this doesn't hurt me. I'm not doing it because it hurts. I'm doing it because it's satisfying.
Yes.
Like it, you know, like it's somehow satisfying and like feeding this dopamine craving.
Yes.
And so there's a big difference.
I think I wrote a quote that she said, they genuinely are attempting to nurture and tend to what was missing. So like, it's more, for me, it's almost like grooming myself. Like, yeah. And that sounds weird to like like, how are you grooming yourself if you're picking a scab? But my goal is more like, this feels good because now it's like cleaner and like looks like the scab isn't over it and it's like flatter. I don't know how to describe it.
No, I know exactly what you mean.
That's like literally what's in my brain. And it feels like, okay, that feels so much better because now it's like clean and like looks neater. I don't know.
Yes. Or like there's something under there. I can get to it if I just keep trying. But honestly, like I had seen, okay, that's a symptom, whatever. But like I was still genuinely surprised when like it had been 30 days on the medication. And I was like, I have not picked my face in 30 days. Like I can't tell you, I've been picking my face since I was 19. And like, I have not had scabs on my face. Like, this is the first time in my life that I have not had a craving to touch my face. Like, that's so weird for me. I can't even explain how weird that is for me. Like, I just don't even care or like, don't even want to.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Wow. So that was really gratifying to know that like, okay, like we're figuring this out. This is what this is.
I think what's kind of amazing about what you've described is that unlike a lot of medicines for depression and anxiety, you figured this out, that it was working almost immediately, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank God. Yeah, this kind of, I mean, it's a controlled substance. It's an amphetamine technically. But for people that truly have ADHD, it is like a stabilizer. So, but yeah, it doesn't have to build up. It works immediately if it's indicated for you.
Wow.
That's amazing. So you said 30 days. Is that how long? Have you been on it longer than 30 days?
I've been on it almost 2 months now.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And we're another thing I did, I don't know if you saw me talking about this, was like, I was a big old compulsive eater. Not necessarily, like I always struggled with feeling like I had a binge eating disorder because I just didn't know I didn't eat like 4 pizzas and 2 liters of Coke. And that's like what I saw on Maury. So I was like, obviously that's a binge eater. Like, I don't know, which is dumb, but like, it's more in like the psychology, right? Like the lack of control. And so I was like, maybe I do have like a little bit of binge eating disorder because I wouldn't eat all day. And then when I was by myself in here, you know, like, it was like a controlled dopamine thing again, like picking skin, or like, it was just like the motion of like snacking and, feeling like I wasn't in control. And then I would feel bad and ashamed because I felt like I wasn't in control of my emotions, because why was I so out of control? Why was I spaced out just like eating? And that's another thing I haven't done since I started the medicine. It doesn't take away my appetite. I'm still hungry, but whatever part of your brain that like craves something for the emotional release is just not doing that anymore. So anything I was doing compulsively, like picking or eating in that way, or it just doesn't happen anymore. So it's very interesting. It's very, very
so wild. It's like to hear that. For you said since you were 9 is like the start of your mental health journey, right? And then you have this switch and it was like instant relief. that's
I'm like,
bananas.
okay, maybe, God, what could I have done in high school?
Can you talk a little bit about how this recent diagnosis and medication and therapy that you've been doing, how that's impacted your parenting?
Well, first of all, a big part of my parenting struggles came from not being able to focus, which I hadn't been able to pinpoint. And again, that stuff is so much harder to see until you're treated. And then you can look back and be like, oh my God. But I just was like, I'm a terrible mom. I have no maternal instincts. Like, and listen, I still am a terrible mom and I don't have great maternal instincts, but it wasn't just that. Like, I was just feeling so out of control of my own emotions and my own mental state that my anxiety, my rage, my sadness, my shame, like all of that was like exacerbated just because I felt so out of control.
Mm-hmm.
And so she told me, like, if this works, it could be that your ADHD was just causing you to feel so just out of touch and out of control of yourself that if it's treated, your anxiety could just naturally decrease. And that's pretty much what happened.
Wow.
So yeah, all facets of my parenting have been better.
Well, you're not alone. I don't have maternal instincts either. So
I'm like, I'm never going to be that great, but it has helped.
We're not terrible moms. We value ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And my friend told me this the other day and I will never forget it. She was like, if you had one leg and a prosthesis and you needed help doing certain things for your kids, like, you're not going to hide your prosthesis and pretend like you have a leg. You're going to say, like, yes, you can help me because I'm missing one of my legs. So yeah, I mean, it's not crazy to think that lots of moms have deficits that, we just have to work around.
Well, in that same analogy, if like a support person, if you saw someone break their leg, you would be like, oh my God, we got to go to the doctor. We need to fix this. But mental illness is not treated the same because for lots of reasons, but it's invisible, it's stigmatized, like all of these different things. So this is blowing my mind. This is wild.
Me too.
I think we need to talk about Rachel Hollis.
Yeah.
And then we should get to questions for
before we run out of time.
Yeah. You want to go, Naya?
Sure. So in her latest book, Rachel Hollis has a quote that says, "Your kids are never old enough to watch you have a breakdown." Obviously, we do not agree with this. Can you share your thoughts about how you feel about letting your children kind of see you at your most vulnerable?
I'd love to. As someone who has spent thousands of dollars in therapy, I have really struggled to show emotion or even feel emotion because my parents were so stoic in my childhood. And I know firsthand the damage that causes and how it trickles into, my relationships, my parenting, all of that. So I don't know who told her this. Like, I don't know who proofread this book or like, and was like, this is it. This is the key. But it's just so far off. And I'm not even obviously an expert, but like, just as someone who has had to work through this in therapy and like has to force myself to like squeeze out a tear because I just am not conditioned that way. I just really hate that. Like, some of the best moments I've had with my children especially my oldest, have been in conversations when I'm able to show him or show them like that this is normal, like it's okay, like, because how do they know they can pick themselves back up if they never see you break down? Like,
Right.
ask me. You don't think you can do it if you've never seen somebody do it. But yeah, it's when we were leaving California, we only lived there for 9 months, and it was like a crazy whirlwind, and we didn't want to come back, and it was sad. And I remember like I burst into tears while I was packing, and I ran to the bathroom so Grayson wouldn't see me. He was like 8, and then I was like, why am I doing this? Like, this is what my mom would do, and like, I'm not my mom. So like I went back out there still crying, and he was like, oh, what's wrong? And I was like, this is sad. Like, I have to leave my friends, and I'm sad, and like I don't want to go back, and like whatever. And like, and they get it. They get it. Like, kids get it. And then I can tell him like, mommy was sad about this. You can cry about this. Like, I don't know where she got this information or why she thought that would be good advice.
Yeah, I think just to add on to what you said, especially because I have 2 boys, it's really important for our boys to know that it's okay to feel big feelings, and it's okay to have them, and it's normal to have them. So I'm totally with you. Instead of hiding in the bathroom, let them see you cry. Let them see you pick yourself back up from hitting rock bottom.
Or because I think it's also okay to model, like, I'm feeling really sad and I need to go take a break. So like, you don't just disappear and they don't see it, but you verbalize like, I'm going to take a bath and take a break because I'm feeling sad and mommy needs some alone time right now, or whatever.
Yes.
So we got a lot of questions. Let's just dive into them.
I will not be long-winded.
How do you keep routines going when ADHD brain says they are boring?
So my ADHD brain does do that. Hence, like why I'm an entrepreneur, because this is flexible and I get to do what I want on my terms. But my brain often says you need to rebel against routines. It's less like this is boring and like you don't have to do this. So actually, I've worked on this in therapy of like telling myself that like someone else didn't make those rules for me. I made those rules. Like I made that routine. I chose it. Like I'm not rebelling against anybody. I chose it because it's good for me to brush my teeth every day or whatever. So kind of just like a lot of thought reframing on that, a lot of just kind of cognitive reframing. And then, you're always going to be like some level of who you are. And ADHD, like I think in a really good job for my brain. Like I have a flexible, creative job, which is good for me. So, I think if you're in the kind of place where, you're in a job that is just totally contradicting the way your brain works, then you might want to explore what other options there are.
I love that you said that, because I actually hate diagnosing as a clinician because I don't like the label, and just the fact that like not everybody's brain works the same, and like just because this is quirky or weird, or it doesn't necessarily mean that everything is a problem that needs to be fixed, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Clearly I'm in therapy, I take meds, like all the things, but you know what I mean? Like it's just
Sometimes you just need to, like find ways of life that work for you better.
Yeah, totally.
Well, this next question comes from somebody who was diagnosed in March, and they say, I want to tell my story, but I'm terrified and I have no idea where to start. Any ideas or suggestions?
I get this a lot because I'm an oversharer. So I get a lot of people that are like, I just don't understand how you tell your story. And the best advice I have here is just remembering that someone needs to hear it, and that shame can't live in the light and all that stuff. And, if my story helps like one person, then it was worth it for me to tell it. And I think if more people knew how it feels to connect on things like this, I do on a grand scale because I have so many people I'm able to talk to. So I have a folder in my iPhone of like screenshots of messages, because I want to remember how powerful connection is and why I'm doing this and why I like, I don't want to quit the internet, whatever. But like, I just think if people would take a risk at telling their story, because I tell people all the time, you don't have to be an influencer. Tell your mom group at whatever the playground that you're struggling with postpartum depression or you just got diagnosed with ADHD. Like, it's the micro communities. That's when another mom's going to be like, oh my God, I was so scared to say something, but me too. And like, you felt like that. I mean, there's moms dying quietly all the time by suicide because they didn't know anybody else felt like they did. So there's just a lot of power in talking to people. And the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Absolutely. Can you alleviate symptoms of ADHD through your diet?
So I'm not a doctor. I've read some studies. There are some NIH studies. They're mostly with kids, from what I've seen. But I think generally speaking, with mental health in general, you want to avoid kind of the same things you would for a lot of reasons. Like no one's going to do well with major sugar spikes. No one's going to do well with too much caffeine. I mean, I think it's just kind of basic. You could look into some of the studies yourself. I mean, it seems kind of arbitrary. I don't know. I think it also is like super specific to you. Like, I have a history of eating disorders. I have to be really careful to not try to restrict things because it can lead to obsession and all that. So I think that one's like just really specific, but I wouldn't, I don't know that I'd start worrying about that yet. I'd worry about like talking to a doctor and getting treated and then kind of going from there.
Caffeine and sugar are so good.
Oh, I know. But
I know. I'm enjoying some right now. I'm drinking a Coke because I'm really tired.
I'm like, yes, I actually did a TikTok that was like, me drinking my caffeine after my therapist says not to do it anymore. But we all have our things.
Let's talk about this one because I feel like it's an important one. This person asks, I would like to hear about helping speak with doctors that don't realize that ADHD presents differently in women.
So a lot of people are scared of this, and I totally get it. First of all, remember that doctors are just people. Having worked in healthcare, like, I don't see them as like these crazy, like, authority, whatever. Like, they're just people that are also at the nurse's station, and like they have erroneous behaviors, and like, they're just normal. But it's hard for them to keep up on everything too if that's not their specialty. And because the odds that you're going to find some super like woke psychiatrist who's a reproductive psych that specializes in women's hormones, like, if that's not at your fingertips, you might have to do some research online. It's 2020. You can pull up like peer-reviewed journals on the internet and print them off or whatever and take them in. And if your doctor is not even open to like looking at whatever literature you find on your own, then I would just try to switch doctors because that's not cool. Yeah, that's not okay. Or if you, it can often help to start with a therapist and get, and tell your therapist all about it and get some kind of like feedback from them. They might have an idea of like who's amenable to those conversations more than others. Or they might help you with language to explain it. I know at different times in my journey, my therapist was really instrumental in like making that, like bridging that connection to the psychiatrist for me. So, I would start with like a lot of self-research and maybe the help of a therapist.
Mm-hmm. I think too, I mean, I definitely see this all the time, like throwing it out there to your network too, because maybe someone knows a doctor that actually listens and wants to collaborate in your care, because that's what all doctors should be doing. Is it should be collaborative care. It's your body, it's your brain. Right. Like, it should be a collaborative process, and you're actually the expert, not them.
Right.
Absolutely.
So yeah, throw it out there to your network and somebody might know someone who is not an asshole.
Also, mom groups are really good for that. Everything like Facebook mom groups, if you like do a search for like therapist or psychiatrist, like usually somebody at some point has made a recommendation.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I thought this one was interesting. So how do you go about starting this convo with a professional without seeming like a med seeker? I'll tell you what when I read this, like my first thought was fire them.
Yeah.
If they tell you that you're a med seeker, fire them. I don't know what your response is. But that was
I actually talked about this on my stories because this is something I am irrationally paranoid about because I've worked in healthcare so long. So like I know the conversations behind the scenes, and I've seen so many drug seekers that I've luckily, again, I have a good relationship with my psychiatrist, but you know, I think as honest as you can be is like, if you try to act like you don't know what Adderall is and you were just born yesterday, like whatever, that's going to look suspicious. Like I would just be like, here's the deal. Like, I get it. Like, but I just told my doctor, like, I just want you to do whatever you would to someone that you're going to evaluate. Like, I know you have protocol and I want to do it. Like, I obviously don't want drugs I don't need. But if I am, you know, qualified for like another diagnosis, then I also want to know that. So, yeah, again, if they're weird about it, then I wouldn't, you know, they have to do their job. They have to evaluate you. But outside of that, I mean, I don't think there's too many psychiatrists, I hope, that are going to like withhold drugs.
Yeah.
You know, hopefully that's not too common.
Well, it just made me also think just about like birth and pain meds not being given, and how there is this power dynamic that can happen between medical professionals and their patients. And it does exist. It's especially, I mean, that's even more true, we know, for people of color. And just that those biases that come out in care and how it shifts a conversation or changes an outcome for someone. And so I think that's where my aggressive, you're fired, came from, is like,
no, I agree with you on like most levels. I guess my main point is like, don't be too paranoid or you're going to sound suspicious. Like,
right. Yeah.
Like I was watching some movie and it's like a comedy scene and she's like going to her doctor and she's like, I just can't focus. And I've heard of this drug. It's called like Adderall, and it's like so obvious. She's like making it up and he's like, no. She's like at urgent care. Okay, this is different. But like, so like we all know Adderall is like a party drug. But so like just be honest. And yeah, if they act super weird about it, they obviously need to not be your doctor.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we're out of time. There were a couple questions we didn't get to, but maybe we can email them to you and you can give us some info that we can share on our stories.
Sure.
Yeah. And
then why don't you tell everyone how they can find you if they want to follow and get your book and whatever you want to plug.
I'm on katiecrenshaw.com, and on Instagram, I'm Katie M. Crenshaw, and you can kind of just find everything from there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Follow her. She's hysterical.
Thanks.
If the Top Knot Squad's content makes you laugh, nod in agreement, or makes you feel less alone, we'd love your support in the cost of producing this podcast. Visit patreon.com/TopKnotSquad to learn more about our budget-friendly sponsorship tiers and how you can help ensure that TKS has a future. Every little bit helps.
If you like what you hear, then be sure to click the subscribe button in your podcast app. While you're there, leave us a review. You can find us on social media. Just search for Top Knot Squad. We welcome your feedback and love making new friends.